For decades during the Cold War, Americans were told that their government was prepared for nuclear war. Civil defense pamphlets explained how to take shelter. Fallout shelter signs appeared in cities. Emergency broadcast tests interrupted normal programming. The public was encouraged to believe survival depended on readiness, discipline, and a little luck. What was never explained was that a separate plan existed, one that did not include the public at all. In the event of nuclear war, the United States government did not plan to remain in Washington, D.C. It did not plan to defend the Capitol as a symbol. Its first priority was the survival of leadership and command. Military planners understood early that Washington would be one of the first targets in any nuclear exchange. The city held the President, Congress, the Supreme Court, the Pentagon, and the communications networks that connected them. A single successful strike could eliminate civilian leadership in minutes, leaving a wounded country without direction. That scenario was treated as unacceptable, regardless of how many people survived elsewhere. Planners believed that without recognizable authority, the nation could fracture into regional control, martial rule, or complete chaos. Preserving the government became synonymous with preserving the nation, even if the capital itself was lost. The solution was evacuation. If a credible warning arrived, selected officials would be removed from Washington and transported to secure sites away from major population centers. These movements were designed to happen quickly, quietly, and with as little public visibility as possible. Speed mattered more than ceremony. This system became known as continuity of government. It wasn't a single bunker or a single convoy. It was a network of people, locations, and procedures meant to keep authority alive after disaster. The underlying assumption was stark. The country might be shattered, but the chain of command must remain. Continuity of government planning expanded rapidly in the 1950s and 1960s. Facilities were constructed under secrecy rules that bypassed normal public oversight. Budgets were buried inside classified defense programs. Knowledge was compartmentalized so that even senior officials often knew only what they needed to execute their part. One of the most elaborate facilities was built beneath a resort in the mountains of West Virginia. On the surface, it looked like a luxury destination where politicians sometimes vacationed or held events. Beneath it, hidden behind reinforced concrete and steel, was a hardened underground bunker designed to house Congress. The bunker contained sleeping quarters, medical rooms, power generation systems, water purification equipment, and extensive supplies. It included communications rooms, administrative offices, and a large chamber designed to function as a replacement House of Representatives. The intention was not comfort, it was continuity. Construction began in the late 1950s under extreme secrecy. Workers were sworn to silence, blueprints were classified, deliveries were disguised. Cover stories described unusual construction as routine expansion. Even many lawmakers who passed through the building had no idea a parallel government was staged below them. The premise behind the bunker was brutally simple. Washington might be destroyed, Congress might be scattered or dead. But a surviving legislative body, even a reduced one, could reassert legality and pass emergency measures. A nation without laws was considered as dangerous as a nation without weapons. In a crisis, select members of Congress would be quietly evacuated under routine travel pretexts. Military aircraft would transport them to the site and move them underground. Once sealed inside, the bunker could operate for an extended period. There was no widely public plan for families, staff, or the general public. This was not accidental. Continuity of government planning was not built to save everyone. It was built to preserve the minimum structure needed to claim that the United States government still existed. The system was designed to keep authority intact, even if the society it governed collapsed outside. The West Virginia bunker was only one component of a larger network. Across the United States, multiple secure sites were constructed to support different branches of government and military command. Some were buried under mountains. Others were hidden behind unremarkable doors marked as ordinary facilities. Military command centers required extreme protection and redundancy. In Colorado, the Cheyenne Mountain Complex was engineered to survive nuclear blasts and remain operational when the outside world might be burning. The idea was to preserve command, control, and communications under the worst conditions imaginable. Inside Cheyenne Mountain, massive blast doors sealed the facility. Equipment was designed for survival, not elegance. Some internal structures were mounted to absorb shock. The complex was built around the assumption that surviving meant functioning, and functioning meant being able to communicate and coordinate forces. Civilian leadership faced a different problem. Fortified sites were useless if leaders could not reach them in time. Presidents and senior officials needed an evacuation process that could activate instantly, even if Washington had only minutes before impact. To solve this, the United States maintained airborne command posts and evacuation aircraft. These planes were prepared to move leadership out of danger fast. Once in the air, the aircraft could serve as a platform for communication and command, especially if ground infrastructure was destroyed or jammed. Publicly, such aircraft were often described as emergency communications tools. Their deeper purpose was more unsettling. They were meant to function as mobile centers of authority, capable of issuing orders, controlling nuclear forces, and maintaining the appearance of a functioning government while the country below absorbed the UDAR. Evacuation planning depended on decision points. If warning systems detected a probable attack, certain actions would trigger automatically. Key officials would be alerted. Transport would be arranged. Secure sites would be activated. The goal was to move leadership before the first blast, not after. This required rehearsals. During periods of heightened tension, evacuation drills were quietly conducted. Government employees were moved without explanation. Facilities tested communications and power. Routes were evaluated and revised. Airspace restrictions could be imposed without public context. To the public, these movements often appeared as normal government activity. But behind the scenes, they were tests of a shadow system built to operate when normal government became impossible. The machinery of survival was never meant to be seen. Continuity of government planning assumed nuclear war would permanently alter the world. These were not shelters meant to wait out a storm. They were designed to operate in a post-nuclear environment where food systems, communications networks, and civil order might collapse for years. That meant planning for life underground. Food rations were calculated, medical contingencies were mapped, water, power, and air filtration became central concerns. Even psychological questions were studied, because confinement and fear can destroy decision-making as effectively as radiation. Inside such facilities, authority would have to be maintained under pressure. Who speaks for the nation if the president is dead? Who has lawful power if Congress is missing? How are orders authenticated when communications are damaged? Continuity planning was built around these questions, but it never had perfect answers. One problem haunted every scenario. Communication after a nuclear exchange might be limited or non-existent. Infrastructure could be destroyed. Electromagnetic pulses could disrupt electronics. Radio networks might be unreliable. Leaders in bunkers could be blind to what was happening outside. Even if leadership survived, governing a shattered nation would be something entirely different. Entire regions might be contaminated. Millions could be displaced. Police and local governments might collapse. The remaining population might not recognize distant officials issuing orders from underground. Continuity of government assumed that authority could be reasserted simply by existing. If leadership survived, planners believed legitimacy could be rebuilt. But legitimacy is not just paperwork. It depends on trust, and trust is fragile when people feel abandoned. Throughout the Cold War, the existence of these plans was rarely discussed publicly. Facilities were denied or ignored. Documentation remained classified. Knowledge was compartmentalized. Oversight was limited, partly because secrecy was treated as necessary for security. This secrecy produced an uncomfortable reality. Decisions about who would be saved were made without public debate. The criteria for evacuation were not transparent. The public message emphasized civil defense, but the real investments emphasized leadership survival. Eventually, the curtain began to lift. In the 1990s, investigative reporting exposed the existence of the congressional bunker beneath the West Virginia resort. Many Americans were shocked not only by the bunker itself, but by how long it had remained operational in secret. The bunker had been stocked, maintained, and kept ready for decades. Personnel had roles, systems were tested, supplies were rotated, money was spent year after year. The public had never been asked whether this was the best use of resources or whether it reflected the nation's values. The revelation also exposed priorities. Vast resources had been dedicated to preserving government institutions. Far less had been invested in protecting the broader population. The implicit message seemed clear. The government planned to survive, even if the people did not. The end of the Cold War did not end continuity of government planning. Facilities were modernized, procedures were updated, threats changed, but the core concept remained. The system was still there, ready to activate if leadership believed the nation was facing catastrophe. After the attacks of September 11th, continuity of government was activated publicly for the first time in a modern-era crisis. Senior officials were evacuated, secure locations were used, emergency authority expanded rapidly, and the public watched fragments of the process play out in real time. For many Americans, this was the first indication that a shadow system existed, one capable of operating outside normal visibility. It was also a reminder that in crises, procedures can move faster than public understanding, and power can shift without debate. Continuity of government remains one of the least transparent areas of national security. Many procedures are still classified. Many locations remain undisclosed. The exact rules for activation and the scope of emergency authority are difficult for the public to evaluate. The central question remains unresolved. In a true national catastrophe, who decides who is saved and who is left behind? Who decides which institutions matter most? Who decides whether legitimacy is preserved by survival or earned by protection? The Cold War ended without nuclear war, but the systems built to survive it remain intact, quiet, and prepared. They are the architecture of a fear that never fully disappeared, and a plan that assumes the nation can be rebuilt from the top down. The most unsettling truth is not that the government planned for nuclear war. It is that it planned to continue without the people, and it built that plan in silence.